Imagine moving to a new city, needing to furnish your apartment on a tight budget, and finally finding what seems like the perfect deal: a beautiful leather recliner for just $150. The seller even offers to deliver it. But then, the delivery never arrives, and strange things start happening that make you question everything. This is the story of how a simple furniture purchase turned into a nightmare, and why trusting your instincts matters more than anything. When I moved to Philadelphia last year, I basically had to start over with everything. I had sold most of my furniture before the cross-country move, and my new apartment looked like a museum exhibit on minimalism. Craigslist quickly became my best friend for finding decent stuff without breaking the bank. I had already scored a coffee table and some lamps with no problems, so I felt pretty confident about the whole process. One evening, while scrolling through listings, I found a gorgeous leather recliner for just $150. The photos looked professional, and the description said it was barely used, just taking up space after a divorce. I messaged the seller, Steve, immediately, and got a response within an hour. He seemed friendly enough over text, and when I mentioned my transportation situation, he offered to deliver it himself, using his company van. I reread the listing carefully. Same wall in every photo, no clutter. The leather looked smooth, seams straight. The measurements matched the corner by my window. I even marked the baseboard with blue painter's tape so I wouldn't second-guess it later. We went back and forth about the details: cash on delivery, 2 short flights of stairs. Steve said he had a dolly and straps. After the first smiley, his replies became clipped. No problem. Got it. 2 p.m. Saturday. I said yes, and he said he'd text when he was on his way. I checked his other posts. He had a dresser and patio chairs listed. Same background, normal prices. I took screenshots and left it at that. I didn't send my exact address yet. I told him I'd confirmed the day before. Friday, he followed up, saying it was still good. I sent the building number and cross street. He asked about the back alley. Chained front only. What floor? I answered, second. He sent a thumbs up and said 10 minutes early or late, depending on traffic. When he asked about stairs, I measured the narrowest point with a tape, 31 inches. The recliner width would be tight on the turn, but the feet looked removable. He said he'd bring a screwdriver. I told him I'd keep the door propped so we wouldn't fumble. On Friday, I also warned him that side streets filled after 5 p.m., but weekends were better. No street cleaning, no game traffic. He said he'd call when parked after another drop. When I tidied, I slid a folded towel along the wall so the feet wouldn't mark it, and tucked the rolled rug upright. I checked the peephole and the angles I'd walk through. I watched the bus at 1:45, then again at 1:55, noting the space turnover. I kept my hand on my phone and bumped the volume up 1 notch. When the van passed the first time, the mirrors were clean, and the rear bumper had a small dent. No roof rack, no magnets. The driver didn't look at numbers. He moved steadily, like he already knew the block. On the second pass, when he stopped in front of my window, he let his face track left to right, like he was counting panes. It felt less like, "Where am I?" and more like, "What's inside?" I typed, "Need help with parking?" but deleted it. At 2:18, I checked the hall. Empty. I nudged the envelope deeper into my pocket and dimmed my phone so the screen wouldn't glare. At 2:25, I straightened the towel strip and thumbed back through the thread. The last thing from him was 2 p.m. works. Saturday morning, I tidied the apartment, rolled up the rug, and cleared a straight path from the door. I set a wedge by the threshold, put my keys on the hook, and slid the cash into an envelope in my pocket. My phone was charged and the ringer was on. By 1:30, the block was quiet. 2 open spots sat right out front. I texted, "See you at 2," and waited by the window. The plan was simple. Door open, chair in, cash paid. At 2, I heard a van and leaned toward the glass. A white panel van rolled past slowly. No branding, no ladder rack, no side windows. It eased in front of my window, idled, then kept going and turned the corner. I waited. No text. I nudged the door open with the wedge and stood in the hall to listen. A bike clicked by. Someone talked about bread down the row. No sliding door sounds, no dolly. At 2:06, the same white van came back slower. It stopped directly in front of my window. I could see a cap and sunglasses, one hand on the wheel. No hazards, no wave. He just stared at my windows like he was counting something. After a few seconds, he rolled a car length and paused again, then took the corner like nothing on the street could hurry him. I watched the empty space he left. The bus hissed at the corner. I didn't step outside. I moved my glass off the counter edge and kept the envelope in my pocket. My phone stayed blank. I typed, "Are you outside?" Then the white van just passed. "Is that you?" The message sent and sat there. No dots, no delivered. I toggled airplane mode and checked the bars. Full service. I looked back through the window and waited. 10 minutes. I held my heel against the wedge so it wouldn't slip. At 2:22, the van ghosted past the far corner but didn't turn down my block. It drifted along the cross street and vanished behind a brownstone. No brakes, no doors, no voice. I sent, "You close." The bubble turned blue and froze. My phone stayed in my hand and my other palm on the door frame. I let the door close to catch, then set the wedge again. I pictured the angle of the turn on the stairs, then stopped doing that because it didn't matter until he was actually here. The street was quiet for a long minute. A plastic bag skittered along the curb and stuck to a drain. Somewhere above me, a door clicked. I tracked each sound without moving from the threshold. The screen was bright and empty. "Let me know ETA," I sent. Same thing. Blue bubble, no dots, no read. At 2:29, the 2 open spaces was still there, waiting to make this easy. I typed, "Are you outside?" and sent it, but my message just hung there without any response. After 30 minutes of waiting, it became clear that Steve wasn't coming. I sent another text, then tried calling, but the number went straight to a disconnected message. The automated voice cut me off twice. I checked the thread again and scrolled to the top like I missed something. It didn't change anything. I put the wedge back in the drawer, closed the door, and slid the envelope into the kitchen drawer. I stared out the window at the 2 empty spots that never got used. I watched a dog walker pass, then a couple with a stroller, and then the street went quiet again. I set the rug back down and pushed the coffee table to its old place. I unplugged the charger and set my phone on the counter. I wasn't going to keep standing by the glass like a sign. I cleaned up the tape and folded the towel. The blue line on the baseboard looked dumb now, so I pulled it slow so the paint wouldn't lift. I carried my trash down to the bin and locked the door when I came back in. I checked the knob twice, then the deadbolt, then pushed my palm flat against the wood to feel the set. I made the best of it. I ordered noodles and ate on the floor, then let Netflix run. A cooking show, then half of a crime documentary, then the ceiling for a while. I stopped checking my phone. When it buzzed, I didn't get up. And when I finally did, it was just a delivery promo and a calendar notification. Around midnight, I brushed my teeth and turned off the lights. I walked the same path I'd cleared for the chair out of habit, then laughed once and stopped. I set my empty glass in the sink and turned the faucet a quarter turn so it wouldn't drip. The lock sat in the same place I'd left it. I flipped the chain up and then down again, just checking. Right then, I heard the distinct sound of my front door opening. The hinges always squeaked something awful, and I had been meaning to get them fixed for weeks. The squeak dragged long and then cut. No knock, no voice, just the door moving like someone knew the weight to give it. At first, I thought maybe I'd forgotten to lock it properly and the wind had blown it open. I stood still and listened for air moving or the click of the frame. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps in my hallway, deliberate and careful, like someone was trying not to wake me up. They paused between boards like the person counted which ones creaked. I grabbed my phone and crouched behind the bed frame. I dialed 911 and kept my voice low. I gave my address, floor, and said the door just opened and someone was inside. The operator asked if I could lock myself in a room. I sat upstairs and started moving. I kept the line open and tried to keep my steps matched with the old carpet so it didn't shift. The footsteps had stopped at the bottom of my staircase. The house held its breath. Then I heard something that made my skin crawl. A man's voice was calling out my full name. Not loud, but clear enough to carry upstairs. He said it straight. No rush, like he was confirming a name for a package. He wasn't yelling or demanding anything, just repeating my name over and over in this flat, emotionless tone. "Stay on the line," the operator said. "Officers are en route." I whispered that he knew my name. She asked if I could barricade. I pushed my dresser an inch, then another. The voice kept saying my name, same speed, like a metronome. It never asked a question. It didn't change. I told the operator what was happening, and they said officers were already on their way. I kept listening. The voice moved a little, like it turned with each word, but I didn't hear steps. He repeated my name again and again, like he wanted me to answer and give him a direction to follow. I crept into my closet and pulled the door almost shut, leaving just enough of a crack to hear what was happening downstairs. I slid my feet between shoes and pressed my shoulder to the coats to break my outline. I put my thumb over the phone speaker and tilted the mic toward my mouth. The man kept calling my name for maybe 2 more minutes, then suddenly went quiet. The absence felt louder than the voice. I couldn't tell if he'd left or was just waiting for me to come down and investigate. I watched the crack for light shift. It didn't. The operator stayed on and counted the minutes. The closet smelled like dust and fabric softener. I barely breathed. Every little sound in the old building seemed amplified. The radiator pinged once, and I stared at the crack until my eyes watered. I tried to pick apart what was the hallway and what was the street. I kept imagining footsteps on the stairs, even though I couldn't really hear anything. I held the phone and waited for the operator to say when they were close. She said the unit was turning onto my block. I pushed the closet door tight against my leg. I didn't move until I heard the knock and a voice yell "Police" through the front. Then I opened the closet and moved. I told the operator I could hear them, and she said to identify myself by name only when I could see badges. When the police finally arrived about 8 minutes later, they found my front door wide open, but no sign of the intruder. They cleared each room, checked under the bed, and looked inside the shower. The hallway rug sat slightly crooked, like a heel had caught it. The deadbolt sat in the unlocked position, and the chain hung down. The lock had definitely been picked, not forced, which suggested someone with experience.
The officer showed me a tiny trace on the latch where a tool had scraped the brass. He shined a light along the strike plate and pointed out how clean it looked around the latch tongue. No splintering, no pry marks, just careful work. They asked what I heard, what time, and what name he used. I told them the exact words. I told the voice never changed and never came up the stairs. I pointed to the path I'd cleared earlier and how the sight line went straight to the kitchen. They told me to check if anything was missing. Nothing was out of place. A drawer sat slightly open that I didn't remember leaving like that. I showed them my phone log and the listing screenshots. I explained the delivery plan, the van circling, the number going dead. One of the officers wrote the plate from a neighbor who thought it looked familiar, but he wasn't sure. They asked if anyone else had my name posted outside. I said only the mailbox had initials. I immediately thought about Steve and that white van circling my house earlier. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental, and the fact that his phone number was already disconnected made it seem like a planned setup rather than a random break-in.
When you're desperate for a break in the entertainment world, any opportunity can feel like your big chance. But what happens when a seemingly legitimate casting call leads you into a trap? This story reveals how trusting your instincts can save you from danger hidden behind a polished facade. When I was 20 and studying theater in Nashville, I was desperate for any opportunity in the entertainment industry. A classmate named Carol told me she'd found some decent gigs through Craigslist's creative section, so I started checking it daily. I treated it like homework: scroll, read, save, refresh. I told myself I would only answer posts that looked legit. No weird vibes, no cash-only meetups. I still needed rent money, so I kept pushing. One posting caught my eye. It said extras were needed for a major country artist's music video. The layout was clean, with a Mercury Records letterhead banner at the top. There were links to previous projects, with names I recognized from local radio. They offered $200 for a day's work, wardrobe notes that sounded normal, and the chance to stand near famous musicians. It didn't read like someone's basement scheme. It felt real, steady. I clicked through every link first. The websites loaded videos, behind-the-scenes photos, crews with headsets, and shooting timelines. The email address didn't look disposable. The signature block included a phone number, job title, and a small logo. The message asked for a headshot, height, sizes, and any dance or movement training. It requested availability for the next 2 weeks with a simple subject line for sorting replies. I replied immediately. I attached my 2 best headshots, front and profile, and a basic resume from college productions where I played supporting roles. I kept the email short. I listed my height, shoe size, and said I was free any weekday afternoon. I mentioned I was a student at the Theater Institute. I pressed send and sat with my laptop open, pretending I was calm. I refreshed my inbox and set a timer to leave it alone. The reply came quickly, professional, like a coordinator who wrote 100 of these a day. They thanked me by name and wrote wardrobe notes in bullet points. Casual bar crowd, no loud logos, bring 2 options, closed-toe shoes. Hair and makeup notes were added. A PDF schedule grid listed call times, parking, and holding areas. It looked like every student job packet I'd seen. It felt routine, which is what I wanted. The casting director's name appeared in the email chain: Tom Wilson. He said he was handling preliminary selections before the main casting day. He wrote they wanted to keep the video under wraps until filming began, so screen-ins were off-site.
He suggested Thursday afternoon at the Hampton Inn downtown, Conference Room B, second floor. He asked me to confirm by replying with my full name and number. I didn't see anything strange. Venues get rented for production all the time. I wrote back confirmed, Thursday at 3, typed my name and number, mapped the route, and screenshotted directions in case my service died. I charged my phone to 100% and packed a snack so I wouldn't have to leave. I set 2 alarms for backup. I put my 2 wardrobe options on a hanger: dark jeans with a plain black top and a simple dress I could throw a jacket over if needed. I slipped my headshots into a clear sleeve and packed everything in a tote to move fast. I set an alarm and tried to keep my day normal: class, notes, coffee, bus home. Every hour I checked my inbox again. The event felt real enough to plan my week around. On Thursday, I got there early. The Hampton sat on a busy block with a little covered driveway and glass doors that hissed when opened. I wore the jeans and carried the dress. The lobby looked quiet. A family in ball caps shuffled out with a cooler. A housekeeper pushed a cart past the elevator. No clusters of girls with headshots or production badges. It was just a regular weekday lobby. I went to the front desk. The clerk smiled and checked the monitor. She said Conference Room B was on the second floor, left out of the elevator. Her voice was normal. She didn't blink at the word casting. I thanked her and walked to the elevator. My tote felt heavier than usual. I told myself, big projects spread people out and keep it low-key to avoid crowds. The elevator chimed and I stepped into a hallway with patterned carpet and beige walls. A small sign pointed to meeting rooms, AC. No voices, no hum of conversation, no chair scraping. I followed the arrows. Outside Conference Room A was a soda machine and a tray with water bottles, half full like someone had used it. Conference Room A had its door closed with a Do Not Disturb sign. I kept going. Conference Room B was open. Inside, a folding table had a tent card reading Check In. A few stacks of glossy one-sheets with Mercury Records logos sat next to a clipboard with a pen tied by string and an empty sign-in sheet. One chair behind the table, no line, no second chair. Tom Wilson sat behind the folding table alone. He had a laptop open and a neat pile of papers on one side. Mercury Records materials were spread around. Tom looked like he was in his 50s. Polo shirt, khakis, a lanyard clipped to his pocket. He stood to shake my hand, said my name like he'd practiced it, then sat back down with a clipboard. He flipped through my headshot slowly, making small pen marks. He asked if I had dance training. I told him basic movement classes and some choreography at college. He nodded and asked if I felt fine performing in front of big crowds. I said yes. He asked if I could follow directions fast with limited rehearsal. I said yes again. His voice was even. He looked at me, then at the papers, then back. He explained the concept. Outdoor concert scenes, lots of crowd shots, stage around a small platform, partner movements, hands in the air, sing-along energy. He talked about heat, long hours, standing, early call times, and that extras would need to take direction from the assistant director without slowing things down. He said there might be quick interaction with the artist, but kept the focus on logistics. It sounded like a real day on set. I recognized the rhythm of crew talk from previous experience. I listened and tried to look confident. He asked about filming conflicts in the next 2 weeks. I said no. Allergies? No. He checked another box and slid a new sheet forward. We keep this under wraps until we roll, he said. We do confidentiality with everyone. I reached for the pen. He paused. The business center downstairs is closed. All contract packets are upstairs in my suite. We can knock it out in 5 minutes. My stomach dropped. He saw it and raised a hand. I know, not ideal. They had a pipe issue this morning. I've got the printer and packets up there. He looked annoyed at the hotel, not me. Sorry about the unprofessional setup. I want to keep you on schedule. He tapped the sheet. We can do this quick.
I thought about other gigs where hotel rooms served as holding spaces. The open conference room door, hallway beyond, elevator visible from the threshold, public space, people around. His materials looked polished. The sign-in sheet had other names already written. He stood, gathered the Mercury 1 sheets and tucked them in a folder. "We'll be fast," he said. I nodded, picked up my tote, and we took the elevator to the 3rd floor. He talked about heat on shoot days and the importance of water. The hallway was quiet. He stopped at room 314, slid a key card, pushed the door open with his foot, and waved me in. The room looked like any standard double: 2 beds, TV, desk, blackout curtains. He stepped in behind me and locked the deadbolt. He sat on the edge of the bed closest to the door and patted the space beside him casually. "Okay," he said, "there's one more thing we do for this artist. The green room gets busy, long days. We like to make sure background can help with downtime." He said basic massage techniques, shoulders and upper back, nothing intense. It creates the right creative atmosphere. He said that like he'd said it many times. "So everyone demonstrates this during auditions," he added. I stood holding my tote. "It's standard, over clothes, 2 minutes to show you can follow directions and be a team player. Industry standard for this client." He looked at his watch like he was on a timetable. "Then we sign your NDA and you're out." My hands started shaking. I didn't move. He stared, softened his voice. "It's fine, no pressure. Everyone does it. Just shoulders. You're okay." He pivoted, his back to me, and waited. I thought about the money, my sparse resume. I didn't want to seem difficult. I put my tote on the desk chair and stepped behind him. I placed my hands on his shoulders. His polo fabric was smooth. I pressed down lightly, working my fingers like I'd seen in videos. He told me to use more pressure. I did. "Good," he said. "Right there." He reached up, as if to adjust his collar, then his hand slid and settled on my wrist, holding it in place. It lingered too long. He let go, and I tried to keep my movements mechanical. He adjusted again, and this time his hand moved along my arm to my side. It stayed on my waist. He made a small, approving sound. I froze, but kept moving my fingers because I didn't know what else to do. He slid his other hand down my thigh, like it was part of a cue. I stepped back on instinct. He leaned forward, looked over his shoulder, and said, "Relax, this is normal. You're doing fine. Just show me you can be comfortable in a green room." I didn't want to be there anymore. He reached for my hip again. I stepped farther back, out of reach. "I have another audition across town," I said fast, my voice tight. "I can't be late, sorry." He looked annoyed. The fake patience left his face. He stood, brushed his hands on his khakis like I was wasting his time. "Someone will call if you get the part," he said flatly. He unlocked the door and opened it. He didn't try to grab or block me. He stood aside, like a normal exit. I grabbed my tote and walked out. I kept steady steps until the elevator doors closed. Then I hit the lobby button, stared at the changing numbers, walked across the marble floor, and out into the air. I didn't look back. I moved down the block until the hotel doors were out of view. I found a bus bench, sat, and held my bag in my lap. I checked my phone, like I might have missed a call. Nothing. At home, I opened my laptop and went straight to Craigslist. The listing was gone.
I checked the email thread and clicked the links. Pages that loaded 2 days ago gave errors. I searched for Mercury Records staff and directories. I found company pages, artist rosters, contact forms, but no Tom Wilson. I tried his name with the city. Nothing matched. I went through what happened step by step and thought about calling the police. I put my phone down and picked it up again. I told myself nothing really happened, that I left before it went further. I told myself I should have been smarter. Others might say it was my fault for going upstairs. I locked the door and turned on every light. 3 years passed. I worked smaller jobs, took different routes home, quit checking Craigslist for work. The shame took months to scrape off my routines. I kept seeing room 314 in my head. I kept hearing the voice call it standard. I kept thinking about other girls walking into that conference room with the same setup, same empty sign-in sheet spaces, waiting for their names. I should have called the police that day. I know that now. Maybe he used different names after. Maybe he moved hotels. Maybe someone else called. I don't know. I write this so someone reading recognizes that drop in the stomach and does not explain it away. If a door feels wrong, you don't have to go through it. I share it so you trust your first no.
Imagine spotting a great deal on high-end cosmetics and perfume for just $25. It sounds too good to be true, right? This story unfolds the unsettling reality behind a seemingly innocent Craigslist purchase and why trusting your gut is crucial in a stranger's world. During my sophomore year of college in 2019, I was constantly broke and hunting for deals wherever I could. Craigslist was my routine. I bought used textbooks, a chipped dresser, and even a coffee maker that worked if I hit it hard enough. After a few bad messages, I learned the patterns. All caps and gift cards meant scam. Normal punctuation and prices usually meant okay. I checked the site on breaks, scrolling fast for something affordable. One Thursday, I saw a listing for a box of high-end cosmetics and perfumes barely used for just $25. The photo showed bottles in a neat row. The labels were turned away, but the shapes looked right. The seller said she was Michelle, a nursing student moving home to save money. Her messages were quick, polite, and normal. Cash only, no holds. The price was too good to ignore. We set the meet for 7 p.m. at the Target lot near campus. That spot was my usual. It was bright and busy. I told Michelle I'd come straight from my bookstore shift and might be 5 minutes late. She replied, "No problem," with a heart emoji. I packed an envelope with the cash and told my roommate I'd be back by 8. I left work a few minutes before 7. My old car was loud but reliable. I tossed a canvas tote onto the passenger seat. February darkness settled over everything. The tightly cropped photos nagged my mind. But I told myself that was fair. People don't want their bathrooms online. Traffic crawled near campus, but Target was close. I liked quick meets. Hand over the item, hand over the cash, done. I'd done many like this, in lobbies, coffee shops. My only rule was to leave if my gut felt wrong. Nothing about Michelle felt wrong. Her tone was steady. She didn't ask weird questions or change the price. I pulled into the lot and parked 2 rows from the main doors in view of cameras. I texted Michelle my car color, row number, and said I was near the seasonal sign. I said I'd wait in the car. I turned the blower down so I could hear the lot. My phone lay face up by the shifter. At 7, I watched a black SUV loop the outer lane and settle in the back with its headlights off.
I checked my phone battery, 41%, and scrolled our messages. She'd sent a selfie in scrubs, half her face visible, a badge turned backward. The name strip was a blur. I shrugged it off. At 7:08, she texted, "Pulling in." I sat up and scanned for a compact with a parking pass like she described. Nothing moved near me. The black SUV stayed dark. I told myself not to stare at every car. A cart line rattled past my bumper. 4 minutes later, another text came. "I'm so sorry, still at the hospital charting. Can you meet me at the medical center lot instead? It'll save us both time." She sent an address and wrote, "Level 2 visitor parking near elevator C." She added, "I'll throw in extra perfume." I stared at level 2. I pictured concrete walls and blind corners. The hospital garage felt boxed in. I wasn't thrilled. Changing plans after I'd parked went against my habits. But she might really be finishing her shift. A hospital lot had cameras and security. People came and went all night. It wasn't like she wanted me to meet behind a warehouse. Her tone stayed apologetic and steady. The price didn't change. I told myself to be flexible, not dumb. I texted, "Okay, 15 minutes." She replied, "You're a lifesaver," with a pink heart and a pin. I tapped the pin and watched the map draw a blue line, 3 miles via the highway. I put my car in park and thought it over. I pushed the envelope deeper into my pocket, slid the tote down so it wasn't obvious, and looked around the lot one last time. The black SUV stayed crooked, its lights off. I checked my mirrors and pulled out slowly, keeping to lanes where cameras faced. The world looked colder through the windshield, even with my heater blasting. I told myself I was overthinking. I'd done plenty of simple exchanges. The smart move was to stay near doors, keep my engine running, and leave if anything felt wrong. I could do that here. I drove toward the medical center, past the football field, and turned the radio off. I thought again about the photo with labels turned away. Maybe she didn't want brand names tagged. People report everything. It was a cheap sale. No one runs a long con for $25. A new text arrived. "Thank you, thank you." I typed NP at a red light and set the phone down. I planned to park by the elevator, keep my lights on, and watch. If she waves from a floor, I'd back out and tell her to come down. If she showed up fast, fine. If anything felt off, I'd drive. I turned under the blue sign for the medical center. Arrows pointed to visitor parking. The garage rose in concrete levels. The pin showed level 2 near elevator C. I stayed on the outer lane looking for signs. I told myself to stop only where I could face out. I thought about texting her again to say I was close but didn't want to handle my phone while turning. My hands were dry from the heater. The steering wheel felt smooth and cold. I checked my doors, the lock buttons, and the green light on the dash. The map arrow crept toward the entrance. The route said, "Right turn, up the ramp, second level, elevator bank." I plugged the new address into GPS and headed over, thinking it'd take maybe 15 minutes. The medical center parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived, which made sense since most offices would be closed. A few cars hugged the edges, including a blue Honda Civic like she'd mentioned. The garage lights hum and threw a dull haze. I pulled into a spot 2 spaces down from the Civic, front-facing the exit lane. I kept the engine idling and watched for movement. Nothing. The Civic's windows were tinted dark. I couldn't see the steering wheel or headrest shape. No one stood near the elevators. I sent a quick text, "Here by elevator C on level 2, hazards on." I stepped out and clicked. My doors locked. The air bit my face and nose. My breath came out visible. Sounds carried strangely in the concrete. A cart clanged somewhere below. A small medical transport van rolled through and left. I stayed by my rear bumper so the car shielded me from the Civic. 1 minute passed. 2. The garage felt bigger than it looked on the map.
As I thought about getting back in and waiting, the driver's door on the Civic opened. My muscles tensed, even though I knew someone was inside. A man stepped out, mid-40s, work jacket, jeans, gray baseball cap. He closed the door with his hip and lifted a hand in a small wave. That tiny movement felt automatic, like something you do to keep a stranger from getting nervous. I didn't walk closer. I kept my fingers on my keys. He walked over with the same small wave and an apologetic smile. "Hey," he said, stopping a safe distance away. "Michelle is still in there finishing charts. She asked me to run this out so you don't have to wait." He moved like he had done this before, but didn't like it. He kept talking fast and soft. "I'm her ride. We live together. I'm just the delivery guy tonight, I swear." I watched his mouth and hands. He didn't smell like a hospital. No badge, no scrubs, just work jacket and cold air. "Which box?" I asked, to keep him talking, not stepping around the car. "She packed it this morning," he said. "Lot of perfume, some pallets. She felt bad changing the meat. She said to make it right." He nodded toward the Civic trunk. "It's in the trunk." Something in the way he said, "make it right," stuck. It was a phrase from our texts. He could have read them, or he could be telling the truth. He looked at my face and saw I wasn't moving. He hurried on. "Actually," he said, "she said to give it to you free for the trouble. You don't have to pay. I'll just hand it off and you can go." 5 seconds. He smiled again, but his eyes were flat. The smile felt like it needed approval. He shrugged, stepped back a few steps, then went to his car. He popped the trunk with the fob and lifted it. He stood to the side, sweeping his hand like a host. "See," he said over his shoulder, "all there." From where I was, I couldn't see inside the trunk, just a black gap. I looked around again. No one else. The elevators were closed. The stair door had a push bar. "Let me call Michelle," I said, taking out my phone but keeping keys in my other hand. He didn't answer at first. He had the stillness people get when waiting for your next move. His head tilted a little. "Go ahead," he said. He tried another smile. "She's probably finishing right now." I scrolled to the thread and hit the phone icon. The ringtone sounded too loud in the quiet garage. I held the phone up to my ear and watched him. He shifted his weight and looked down. After 2 rings, I heard a buzz that wasn't my phone. Soft, close. It came from his jacket pocket. His hand slapped his pocket like he could quiet it by touch. His face changed instantly. The friendly look flipped off. He stared at me in a flat line. I pressed end, thumb ready. He pulled out a phone with a cheap case. It lit, showing the same last digits as my contact. He didn't turn it to show me. He slid it back in his pocket. I stepped back toward my car door. "I'm going to go," I said. My voice came steady. I didn't wait for a reply. I moved fast around my bumper. He started walking, fast but not running. Shoes scuffed the concrete. He said, "Hang on," in a different voice. I didn't hang on. My fingers missed the unlock button the first time. I tapped again. The car chirped. I yanked the handle, slid in, and slammed the door. I hit the lock. He put a hand on the glass, not pounding, just a single knuckle tap, and leaned to look at my dash. I fired the engine and turned the wheel hard. He stepped back like he owned the space, unconcerned about getting his toes run over. He held something in his other hand, a small notebook, and stared at my plates, writing down details. I pulled out slowly so I wouldn't hit a column, then accelerated down the lane. I kept my eyes on him in the mirror until the ramp hit him. My heart thumped, but my hands worked the wheel. I left the garage and took the first right back to campus. I checked behind me. No headlights followed close. I circled a block through student apartments just to be sure. When I was confident I wasn't being followed, I called my roommate,
told her everything. She told me to come straight home, no stops, and to call security and police. I agreed. I parked outside our building under hallway lights and walked inside with keys in hand. I locked the door, then called campus security. I gave them the time, location, car details, and the fake meat change story. They told me to stay inside, write everything while fresh, and call city police. I called the non-emergency line and repeated the story. The officer asked if he threatened me. No. Tried to open or block the door? No. Touched the car after the tap? No. Property changed hands? No. They said they would report it and send a patrol to check the garage. They said this happens often. Usually someone is trying to get a person alone for theft or worse. He didn't say worse, just paused. They told me to keep texts and not respond. If the number texts again, screenshot and send it with the report. Campus security came to our door, took my statement, and went to the lot by Target, just in case. I showed them the thread with Michelle's photos, scrubs, and blurred badge. An officer said the badge looked mirrored like a selfie in a bathroom, not a hospital. He pointed to a towel rack in the corner I hadn't noticed. I didn't sleep much, but kept lights on and stayed in the living room with my roommate. I charged my phone and checked it often. No new messages or calls. Next morning, I called the hospital switchboard, asked if a Michelle with that last name worked there. No one by that name, said the operator, not nursing or anywhere in the building. A day later, the police called back. The phone number was registered under a fake name on a prepaid account. They couldn't trace it without a warrant. There wasn't a crime on paper, so no warrant. They logged the vehicle description and time. They advised sticking to public meets only. Never go to a second location if the first is safe. I nodded, already knowing that. I kept thinking about the trunk, its black mouth, and how he moved aside so there was room. For the rest of that week, I parked under cameras and stopped buying used stuff. I never found out what would have happened if I'd walked over to that trunk.
When you're broke and moving into your first home, finding affordable furniture on Craigslist feels like striking gold. But sometimes, even the most ordinary transactions can turn into awkward or sketchy experiences. This story tells how my coworker's search for a rocking chair on Craigslist unfolded, and why caution is always needed. About 2 years ago, my coworker Dave bought his first house and needed furniture for the front porch. We were both 26 and broke, so at lunch in the break room, we scrolled Craigslist on his phone. Dave was looking for a wooden rocking chair he could sand and stain. It felt like an easy win, something small to make the place his. We ignored the usual junk. Then we saw a solid oak rocking chair, barely used, listed for $50. The photos were clear, showing different angles, the grain on the back slats, 2 matching scuffs on the runners, and a tiny chip on the right arm. It looked real and heavy. Dave messaged the seller, Mike. The reply was fast and normal. Mike suggested meeting at Westfield Mall, 7 p.m. at the Target entrance. He said he'd be in a blue Ford pickup with Texas plates, and the chair would be in the bed under a blanket, cash only. He sounded eager, but not weird. It felt routine. We said yes and made a plan. Bring a moving blanket and bungee cords, park under lights and cameras. Dave joked about Craigslist horror stories and shrugged. I saved the photos to his phone in case the ad vanished. At work, Dave double-checked the trunk through his organization habit. After work, we headed over. The lot lights were on, and the sky was fading. We hit the ATM and pulled a $50 bill. Dave showed Mike's last message, "See you at 7." We parked where we could watch the Target doors from the crosswalk. I scanned for a blue Ford pickup with Texas plates. None matched.
At 7, a man in work clothes walked directly to our car from the crosswalk. Cap, boots, and a shirt with a faint parts logo. He leaned against the car to show a text. Mike said his truck was just around the corner. Dave and I exchanged glances. We waited. Then Mike's pickup appeared, parked far in the lot. He carried the chair wrapped in a blanket. The transaction went smoothly. Mike took the cash and thanked us. We loaded the chair into Dave's truck bed. It fit perfectly. Dave felt proud. Later, Dave told me the chair felt like it was made for him. The porch looked a little more like home.